I wasn't ready to confront myself, nor was I ready to confront the stats. Oh my god. You've got to be kidding me. Good morning, it is Tuesday and I had the best intentions. Amy at the beginning of this video is so hopeful. I'm struggling to get my words across today. Hey, hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Amy and we have a little bit of a situation. That situation is that I see the bookish community has decided to tackle their physical TBRs, and this has been happening for quite some time, but I stayed so far away from this movement because I wasn't ready to confront myself, nor was I ready to confront the stats. But you can only run away from yourself for so long, and so recently I painstakingly went through every single book I own, and as I was going through them, I was writing them down alphabetically by title. My numbers are staggering. I was actually blown away by the amount of books that I own that I have not read, and so I decided to tackle this problem in the way that everyone else is tackling this problem, and we've got a read it or unhaul it kind of situation going on here. I'm not the first creator to do this, and so I will link various channels who have done something similar before down below if you want to go check them out. I am calling my iteration of this challenge Spine and Punishment. So I have a whopping 359 books in this house that I have not read, and that in itself comes with a caveat. That caveat being that I have even more books in storage at my parents' place because our flat is very small. To make matters easier for myself, I decided because I am a visual person, I would slap it into a chart. So what you're looking at here is a chart of all of the unread books on my shelves. Each white block represents a book I am yet to read. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be reading them. As we read them or unhaul them, I get to color in a little block on the chart, and that way we have a visual representation of how far we are into this challenge. I am aware that I have a problem, and so we need to put some rules into place. Rule number 1, if I get 50 pages into a book and I am not fucking with it, I get to unhaul it right then and there. I am not going to be putting myself through books that I'm not enjoying when I have so many options and opportunities that I could jump to instead. Rule number 2 is I get to buy one new book or add one new book to my collection for every 10 that I have either read or unhauled. I am obviously allowed to stack up those numbers. I am allowed to keep that bargaining chip whenever I feel like it is necessary. I'm also allowed to read outside of this list if I would like to, but if I do that, I have to do so in a way in which I don't accumulate the book physically. I also believe that my problem is not really owning books, but owning so many unread books. So I feel like if I would like to buy a title that I have read and already loved, then I am allowed to add that to my collection outside of my 1-to-10 ratio, simply because that wouldn't be adding to the number of unread books that I have on my shelves. I've decided that if the book starts with the word A or the word the, I look at the next letter in that title in order to rank it alphabetically. So for example, if I want to read A Game of Thrones, that book falls under G and not A. Additionally, speaking of series, if I happen to land on a book that is part of a series, I have to read the book that I am on within that series. So if I land on the 4th Game of Thrones book, but I'm yet to read the first one, I then have to read the first one instead. I hope that that makes sense. So I'm going to be selecting my titles at this point in time with a spinning wheel. If you have any suggestions as to how I should be picking my titles, if you have any ideas or anything you'd like to see that is not the spinning wheel method, please do let me know below and I will happily switch it up. So for episode 1 of Spine and Punishment, the day that I am recording this is the 22nd of September 2025. So I think I'm going to let this challenge run until the end of September, and we're going to see how many books we can knock off this list during that time. But without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to past Amy, who has chosen what she's going to be reading. Enjoy! Hello, I hope that introductory Amy has explained everything very well, because current Amy is feeling very sick, and so it's been delegated to future Amy. Apologies, future Amy. I know that you probably don't want to do it either. But what I have in front of me is I have got a spinning wheel. I have the letters of the alphabet. I have A to Z, except I don't actually have Z and I don't have X because I don't own any book titles that start with those letters. So then we'll move on to the next spinning wheel, which will have the corresponding number in. We'll spin again, and Bob's your uncle. That's how we're going to pick what we'll read. So without further ado, I'm going to get the screen recording going and then we'll see what we land on. Okay, everything is recording. I believe all the technicalities have been sorted out. I just want to say I'm so glad that we as a community decided that the spinner wheel was how we were going to choose what to read, because as you can tell, I have a lot of books and I often don't really know where to start in terms of choosing them. So this does simplify things a bit. We have D. It looks like we have D. Okay, so we're going to start with letter D. I wrote all of my titles out in this crusty ass notebook. This was going to be my reading journal, and then I decided that it was crusty, so I got a nicer one. And I have hopefully set it up by now. So if you would like to see that video, I will link it up top. You are more than welcome to do so. In D, we have 23 titles. So I'm going to shoot over to the next one. I have added number 1 to 40, and we're just going to remove options 24 onwards. So now that we're ready with our 23 possible titles, let's see what we get. We've landed on 23. 23, which is the last one. Oh my god. You've got to be kidding me. Oh, I really don't want to read that. Okay, but we're going to. We've landed on Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Let me just go fetch the first victim. Okay, I said I would fetch the first victim, but I feel like the first victim in actual fact is me, because look at the size of this thing. It's bigger than my face. We have Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This won the Women's Prize for Fiction a couple of years ago. I have no idea what it is about. I know that it is a retelling of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, but I've never read it. I've heard you don't need to. So let's get you the blurb. Demon's story begins with his traumatic birth to a single mother in a single white trailer looking like a little blue prize fighter. For the life ahead of him, he will need all of that fighting spirit along with buckets of charm, a quick wit, and some unexpected talents, legal and otherwise. Okay, so the blurb goes on from there, but I think that's all I need to get started, and start it I will. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll see you once I have a better idea of what the book is actually about. Hello friends, happy Monday! I feel like a brand new person, so I'm going to give you a little life update. For those of you who are just here for the reading, I will leave you a little timestamp. Feel free to skip ahead. But for those who are interested, a couple of months ago, I decided I wanted to start hosting my very own craft workshops. And as someone who's never hosted a workshop a day in her freaking life, there was a lot of prepping, a lot of planning, and a lot of research that had to go into making this event happen. I decided to go with a scrapbooking workshop. It was so cute. So what we did was everybody got together. I printed out everybody's photos beforehand. We did a quick lesson in color theory and layering and textures. We did some exercises in short-term and long-term memories and how to convert short-term memory into long-term memory through visualization and writing. And it was just such a vibe. Everyone had such a good time. Everyone was so cute. They made some really, really cool stuff. And I am just so excited. I've already booked my next one, which is also surreal. It's surreal. So I think that this might be the start of a brand new chapter. And we're very excited, very grateful, but also very exhausted, because as someone who is A, anxious, and B, never done this before, I really went like elbows deep into the research. I did market research. I read books on how to design workshops. I designed like 3 different workshops before I finally settled on the workshop that I was going to do. I made examples to explain all of the concepts, and it was a lot. There was a lot going on. So I think this week we're going to take it nice and slow, which means that we get to do a lot of reading, which I am very excited for. But I digress. Let's talk about Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is the first book that I got in my Spine and Punishment challenge, and initially I saw we were reading this and my knee-jerk first response was, I don't want to read that. And I don't know why. I read The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver years ago. I loved it. I thought it was so good. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me cry more than it made me laugh. And I think I was just intimidated and scared that this just wouldn't hit the same. And I had nothing to be worried about. Absolutely nothing. I'm not very far in. I think I'm on chapter 9 of like 64. So we are on chapter 9, page 59. We're not even 100 pages in. And I have wept. I have cried. This has just been punching me directly in the feelings, and I'm having the best time. So I still don't know if I quite get the vision behind the whole book, but from what I have read, I can tell you that we follow Demon Copperhead. He is born to a mother who is a drug addict, and she isn't all that present in his life. And so we have this like hyper-independent kid, which is really, really tough to read about. We are following a lot of heavy subjects in this book, so if you want to pick it up, please do check trigger warnings, because whoa. It is sad. It is really sad. It is really heavy, but Barbara Kingsolver just writes in a way that I don't even know how to explain it. It grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go. I think I'm going to annotate it. I've been underlining things here and there, but I haven't really been writing my feelings or my thoughts next to those annotations, and so I would really like to just get a better idea of what it is I am tracking, what it is I am looking for. And so I think before I read anymore, I'm just going to spend some time fleshing out those annotations. But that's about it. That's as far as I've gotten. So thank you for following along in Girl Starts Workshops. It's been great. Good morning, it is Tuesday, and I had the best intentions of reading more of Demon Copperhead yesterday. I started my reading journal instead. She is gorgeous. I think you're going to love her. She looks like this, and if you want to see me set it up, I have released that video and I will link it for you up top. So I got a little bit distracted doing that yesterday, and truth be told, I need to do some more work in it today. It takes a lot longer to set these things up than I initially thought. So I have downloaded the audiobook of Demon Copperhead. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be listening to it while I work, because like I said, I would like to annotate the book, so I'll let you know what I decide to do, but for today at least, I would like to annotate all of the pages that I have already read. So I think I'm going to do some more work on my reading journal, and then we can hop into that. Also, it's a public holiday tomorrow. So John and I have decided that tonight is date night. We're going to go play some air hockey. We're going to go get some burgers and a cocktail. It's going to be divine and fantastic. So very much looking forward to that. Welcome to Thursday. I've been editing this here video's footage and putting everything together and all of that jazz. And Amy at the beginning of this video is so hopeful. She's so optimistic that she's going to manage to read a couple more books before the month ends. It is now September 25th. I've just breached the 100-page mark in Demon Copperhead, and I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be able to read more than one book in this video. I'm not going to lie to you. The reading has just not been what my brain wants to do. I've decided to start a reading journal, and everyone knows because I won't shut up about it. And I've kind of just been hyperfixating on that. I did download the audiobook for Demon Copperhead so that I could listen to it while I was working on my bullet journal, but I didn't like the narrator's voice, so that was a bust. Anyway, today it is very sad, very gloomy weather, so we're gonna try to just lock the fuck in and get some reading done today. So far, I'm really enjoying it. That's the thing. I'm not even having a bad time. I'm actually having a really good time. But it's one of those books where I'm having a good time. It's beautifully written. I'm so invested in our characters. But also, why must she hurt me like this? I was talking to my mother-in-law who's read this book, and her kind of takeaway from the entire novel was just how much can happen to one person, how many bad things can one person go through. And that really does feel like what Miss Kingsolver is trying to put the reader through, and it's really hard to watch because in this stage of the game, Demon Copperhead is 11. He is but a youngin', he's a child, and everything that's gone wrong in his life absolutely had nothing to do with him. He was just born into really dire circumstances, and so you have the sense that Demon wants to have control over everything, or as much as he can, and that comes through in various different ways. So for instance, he's really enamored by the ocean, and he can name pretty much every ocean animal that there is to know, and I think that compulsion to know things is just a way of seeking control. Similarly, he's really into comic books and superheroes, and he can kind of rank everybody in the Marvel universe. He knows exactly what dynamics there are between the characters, and this is also just an attempt at having some control and or understanding of the world around him. And just watching him grapple and be so desperate to have a say in the world is really tough and really challenging and really sad. But I do really enjoy Barbara Kingsolver's writing style. I think that her way of writing is kind of soft gut punches. It feels like a boiling frog situation where you just read these things and you're watching everything just get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then out of nowhere, she'll kind of just drop a line that actualizes the situation and makes it all sink in at the same time. So I'm gonna go read, and then I'll check in with you once I have a little bit more to say. I'm struggling to get my words across today. So hi, let me just greet you first. It is the 29th of September. It is Monday, and as much as I would have loved to come on here and tell you that I finished Demon Copperhead, I have not, but I've come pretty close. I have 107 pages left. So we don't have that much more to read, which is good because I'm not entirely sure how I'm feeling about this book. I was enjoying it a lot in the beginning, and I think that's because I really enjoy the way that Barbara Kingsolver writes children characters, and it's something that she did in the Poisonwood Bible as well. She has this really good way of capturing childhood, but making it kind of interesting enough to read about as an adult, if that makes sense. So I really enjoy the way that she's able to blend those two kind of things together. And Demon, our main protagonist, is now getting older. So he's no longer in that childhood phase. And with that, I'm starting to feel just a little bit confused as to what this book is saying. I think the main question this book is trying to ask is, are we destined to turn out like our parents? That's the main theme, in my opinion. But we're also talking about masculinity, and we're talking about what happens when a young boy has to be man of the house from a very young age. And I'm not entirely sure what Barbara Kingsolver is trying to say on the whole masculinity front, because a lot of her portrayals of masculinity seem very stereotypical, and it kind of rubs me up the wrong way, because we can kind of see how these stereotypical manly things are not good. They're not good for whoever is around them. We're talking about the increased violence. We're talking about the lack of care, the lack of talking about feelings, talking about looking at young girls as opposition as soon as they don't give you what you want or you feel left out, and stuff like that. And so we're not challenging any of the stereotypes of masculinity. And that's fine. Not everything has to challenge a stereotype. That's okay. But it does kind of leave me a little bit confused. So if we're not going to be challenging stereotypical kind of views and outlooks on masculinity, are we then just trying to say how these stereotypes are perpetuated? But if so, I feel like it's just not a very nuanced way of looking at it. Our protagonist is not very wealthy, and he is living in an area that is also not very wealthy. And so it just kind of feels like in order not to be a quote-unquote bad man, you have to be rich? Question mark? I don't know. So I don't know how I feel about this book. and I will try and decide before the next time I see you, but first I have to finish it. So maybe that will clear up some of the confusion I have at this point in time. Let's see. We are back, and I have finished Demon Copperhead and also decided how I feel about it, and we're kind of back with another unpopular opinion because I did not like this book. There are a lot of things I think are wrong with this book. Now, we're going to talk about it, we're going to get into it, but I just want to say that my opinion on a book is just that. It's my opinion on a book. And this book, if you are unaware, won both the Women's Prize for Fiction as well as the Pulitzer Prize in 2022. So there are a lot of people backing up this book. There are a lot of people that really enjoyed this book, and if you want to know how you would feel about a book, just pick it up for yourself. With that caveat out of the way, oh my goodness, I am concerned about the state of humanity. I'm concerned about book prizes. I really enjoyed this book to begin with. As you would know, I started annotating this book, and if you can see that, you can see that my enjoyment of this book simmer down about a third of the way in. Here's why. The fact that this book won the Women's Prize for Fiction is absolutely insane to me. It makes zero sense in my mind. Because yes, Barbara Kingsolver is a giant in the literary world. She has written many a book and people have historically really, really enjoyed them. I have been one of those people who have historically really enjoyed her books. And the experience I had with Demon Copperhead kind of puts the Poisonwood Bible, which is the only other book of hers that I've read, into perspective, because as I said in the intro, I read it a really long time ago, and I think I am a more critical reader since reading it. And so the problems with this book for me were really obvious, and I am not seeing enough people talking about it, so I'm going to put in my 2 cents. There are problems in this book in terms of plotting and just logic and common sense that don't make any sense to me. But the biggest problem I had with this book was its use of stereotypes, and I started feeling that way in the last clip already. And so I decided to go and think on it to really figure out how I felt. And it kind of just got worse, because the more I thought about these stereotypes used to explain and define masculinity within this book, the more I started thinking about the other stereotypes that were present in this book. I mean, we're talking about the Appalachians of America, and I'm not very familiar with this region, but I feel like you really didn't need to be in order to read this book. We're talking about poverty, and we're talking about the opioid crisis, and in a lot of ways we're talking about how systems fail us, specifically how systems fail the poor. To use the terms in the book, we're talking about hillbillies, and it's just not done in a way I feel is very respectful and just cannot be representative of actual people. Everyone felt like a stereotypical representation of what the rest of the media might portray that area as, and that characterization makes zero sense, because within the book we have characters who try to challenge the stereotypes. They get really upset about the stereotypes of their area that they see on TV. But the characters within the book are absolutely no different. And so I feel like for nuance and representation, this book just did a really poor job. Additionally, I already touched in the ways that masculinity was represented in this book, but femininity is a whole different ballgame in itself. And this really irks me because it won the Women's Prize. I shudder to believe that this is what we chose as the best representation of women's fiction in 2022, because the women in here are vapid. There are so many of them who are useless, who don't know how to take care of themselves. And yes, you could argue that this book is being told from a young man's perspective. I get that. It is honestly writing that I would expect from a man myself. It staggers me because there are women with agency within this book. Yes, there are few and far between, but those who do only have agency insofar as their capability to to look after a man. And that kills me because there are instances in this book where women are repeatedly referred to as literal dolls, and their characterization does no more than portray them as such. At no point does that kind of view of women ever change. And so while I was reading it, I kept holding out hope that the other shoe would drop, and it just never did. The way that the story is told is kind of confusing at times because sometimes we just have these huge time skips where we breeze over really big parts of this child's life, but then there are other moments where we slow down and we get a lot of detail about moments that don't really seem to matter in the long run. Ultimately, my problem with this book is that it feels just destructive. It feels like it's doing more harm than good. It feels like it's perpetuating the kind of stereotypes that it's trying to call out. If you are interested in those kinds of discussions, if you would like to read something about how systemic injustices really does affect poverty, please pick up The Men We Reaped by Jasmine Ward. I've spoken about it multiple times on this channel, and I will continue to do so. And the distinguishing factor here is that both these books are really sad. They deal with really heavy subject matter. But in the case of Demon Copperhead, I felt like it was just trauma porn. And I feel like the distinction lies with A, intention, and B, the kind of message that you are sending about the hardships of other people. Demon Copperhead just felt ingracious. It felt like the trauma and the sadness that was going on within that book was purely there for entertainment value. We never really got to the real roots or the causes or even the consequences of going through his life. I know that there are a lot of people who DNF this book because it's simply too sad, but that I don't think is the biggest problem with it. I'm going to end the rant here because I'm going to get really worked up and I can talk about this for a really long time. So thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of Spine and Punishment, where I am reading through my physical TBR. I upload videos every second week, so I would love to have you back in the future. Let me know if there's anything that you want to see. Did you read Demon Copperhead? Did you have a problem with the way that these characters were portrayed? If so, please do let me know in the comments. If you would like to stick up for Barbara, you can do so, also in the comment section down below. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.